Hey guys, tonight some friends and I will step onto the quiet shores of a digital campfire where we're trading burnout for blueprints and anxiety for action, one timeless principle at a time. Picture this, your phone's dopamine slot machine finally powering down, the mental clutter of the someday disease dissolving into a clear, time-blocked blueprint, that gentle click of a system automating a task that used to drain your daily willpower. Let's be real. If you tried to implement all 34 of these life cheat codes tomorrow, you'd be overwhelmed by noon. But here's the secret. This isn't about hustle. It's about building an autopilot advantage, so your mind can finally rest, knowing the one barrier rule and deep work sanctuary are guarding your energy while you sleep. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what we do here. And let us know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The Voluntary Leash. We like to think of our devices as tools, but we rarely admit how easily the roles reverse. The most pervasive threat to our focus isn't forced upon us. It's a setting we actively enable, mistaking constant availability for connection. This is difficult to confront because it means our distraction is, at some level, a choice we make every single day. This dynamic begins with the most subtle and pervasive thief of our time. It's not a person or a policy. It's a setting on a device you carry by choice. A single setting that transforms you from an owner of the device into a respondent, a servant to every chime and buzz that cuts through the air. This is the voluntary leash. We attach it to ourselves each morning, clicking on the option that allows the digital world to reach into our physical reality and command our eyes, our hands, and our minds at a moment's notice. It is a choice, but one so rarely examined that it feels like a default state of being. Every notification, from a social media like to a news alert, to a work email, functions as a tiny digital imperative that you have been conditioned to obey. It doesn't ask, it declares. It says, "Look at me now." And we do, often without a second thought. We surrender our focus, our train of thought, and our precious minutes for a piece of information that is rarely urgent and rarely important. This constant context switching comes at a real cognitive cost, fracturing our concentration and ensuring that deep, sustained thought becomes a rarity. The act of turning these notifications off, then, is not a loss of connection to what matters. It is the deliberate severing of that voluntary leash. It is the conscious decision to choose what you pay attention to, based on your own priorities and timing, rather than having it chosen for you by the whims of an algorithm or the impatience of others. In this context, silence on your phone is not emptiness. It is the fertile ground from which genuine focus and creativity can finally grow. This simple act of reconfiguring a setting forces a profound question. Who is the master of your attention? Is it you, with your intentions, your goals, and your to-do list? Or is it the aggregated whims of every app, every contact, and every company vying for a slice of your consciousness? When your phone dictates your responses, it dictates your time. Reclaiming this control is the first and perhaps most important step in taking back your day. It moves you from a state of reaction to a state of intention. The leash is voluntary because you have to put it on each day willingly. The power to take it off has been there all along, not in a grand gesture of digital decluttering, but in the quiet taps through your settings menu that finally declare your attention your own. Leash off or on.
The Clarity Gambit. What if the common advice to find your motivation is actually the very thing holding you back? We wait for a feeling, a bolt of inspirational lightning to strike before we take action, not realizing we're waiting for a symptom to appear before treating the cause. The real obstacle is rarely a lack of drive. It's a lack of direction so precise it feels mechanical. We often operate under the assumption that our biggest obstacle is a lack of motivation. We wait to feel like doing the hard things, believing that the right mood will magically propel us into action. But this waiting is a trap. It confuses cause and effect. The problem isn't a lack of fuel for the engine, it's a foggy windshield that makes it impossible to see where to go. You can have a full tank of motivation, but if you don't know which way to point the car, you won't get anywhere. This is where the Clarity Gambit comes into play. Motivation is fickle and emotionally dependent. It's a feeling, and feelings are notoriously unreliable. The key insight is that motivation most often follows action. It rarely precedes it. You don't feel motivated and then go for a run. You go for a run and then you start to feel motivated and accomplished. Therefore, the solution is not to scour your emotions for more motivation, but to engineer a process that eliminates the need for it. This is achieved through ruthless, almost absurd clarity. A vague goal like get fit or write more is amorphous and easy for your brain to ignore or delay. It offers no tangible starting point. But a command like put on running shoes and walk to the end of the street, or open the document and write one sentence, is simple, clear, and almost impossible to intellectually argue with. It bypasses the emotional resistance center of the brain, the part that dreads the effort and complains, and engages the mechanical, procedural part. You are not deciding to become a runner, you are just deciding to put on shoes. The act of putting on shoes leads naturally to stepping outside, which makes walking to the end of the street the obvious next step. The initial action builds its own momentum, generating the motivation you were waiting for in the first place. This approach challenges the romantic, widespread notion that meaningful work must be driven by grand passion or intense feeling. It suggests the discipline, forged through crystal-clear instructions we give ourselves, is infinitely more reliable. The implication is that our biggest daily battles are won not in the moment of action itself, when willpower is already depleted, but in the earlier moment of planning. By taking 5 minutes to break a daunting task into a stupidly simple first step, we make the path so obvious that internal resistance has nowhere to hide. The investment is in clarity up front, which pays dividends in effortless execution later. It's a strategic gambit that tricks the reluctant parts of our mind into starting. And starting is everything.
The first hour principle. Consider the first hour of your day not as time, but as the tone of voice for the internal conversation you'll have with yourself until evening. How you choose to spend it, in calm or in chaos, doesn't just influence your day, it actively designs it. Most of us, however, forfeit this design power before we've even gotten out of bed. The initial moments of your day are not just another time slot, they are the set dressers for the entire production that follows. They establish a rhythm, a tone, and a default level of focus that echoes for the next 12 hours. This period is uniquely sensitive because your mind is most impressionable, transitioning from the quiet of sleep to the stimulation of being awake. What you feed it during this vulnerable window has an outsized impact. It's the difference between building a foundation of calm intention or starting on a foundation of fractured reaction. Reaching for your phone the instant you wake up is like starting a symphony with a blaring fire alarm. It is a jarring, violent intrusion into a quiet mind. This act immediately fractures your peace, flooding your nascent consciousness with the agendas, demands, and crises of other people, whether from work emails, news headlines, or social media updates. It instantly sets a reactive and distracted tone, teaching your brain that its priority is to respond to external stimuli. You begin your day behind, already playing catch-up with a world that started without you. Conversely, the conscious act of protecting that first hour for quiet thought, for reading a physical book, for a slow ritual like making coffee or writing, is the equivalent of carefully tuning the instruments before the concert. It is a deliberate, gentle process that signals to your brain that you are in charge. It creates a container of calm and intentionality that proves to be remarkably resilient to the inevitable chaos of the day. Winning the first hour doesn't guarantee a perfect, problem-free day, but losing it almost certainly guarantees a fragmented and reactive one where you struggle to find your footing. This principle elevates the mundane morning routine from a matter of personal preference to a near-sacred act of self-determination. It moves the battle for a focused life from the crowded, chaotic afternoon to the quiet, empty arena of the early morning. The implication is that the quality of our entire day is largely a downstream effect of the choices we make in that first hour. It suggests that the most effective form of productivity isn't about managing time, but about managing focus. And the best time to manage focus is before it has been scattered. The real work, then, happens not when we are deep in the thick of our tasks, but at 6 a.m. in the quiet dark, with a single conscious choice to protect that space for ourselves. It is a small, daily investment that pays compound interest in focus and clarity until the moment you go to sleep.
The someday disease. Someday is the most dangerous word in the language of personal ambition. It's a magical incantation that makes pressing goals disappear from the present tense, relieving us of immediate pressure, but also of any real progress. We trust a future version of ourselves to be more capable, while the current version avoids the simple work of scheduling. There is a silent, terminal illness for dreams and aspirations. It's not a lack of talent, resources, or opportunity. It's the constant, comforting deferral of action to a mythical future date called someday. This is a concept we all know intimately. It's the language of good intentions without the burden of immediate action. We plan to learn the guitar, write that book, start that business, or get in shape on someday, a date that never appears on any calendar because it doesn't exist. It is a temporal fantasy land where conditions are always perfect and motivation is constant. Someday is a seductive and insidious lie we tell ourselves to avoid the mild discomfort of starting today. It is the graveyard where projects go to die, slowly and quietly, with no fanfare or obituary. We don't actively cancel them, we just let them fade through neglect. The antidote to this disease is not a grand, sweeping gesture of action. Those are often just another form of the same fantasy. The cure is far more mundane and far more effective. The simple, brutal act of scheduling. If something is truly important to you, it deserves a place on your calendar, now, not in the abstract future. This act of writing it down, of assigning it a specific day and time, is a profound shift. It transforms a vague wish floating in the ether of your mind into a concrete commitment with a time and a place. It moves the goal from the realm of philosophy to the realm of logistics. You are no longer asking yourself, will I do this? But when will I do this? This practice forces a quiet but necessary confrontation with our own mortality and the finiteness of time. A calendar is a tangible map of the limited hours you have available. Putting a goal on it is an acknowledgement that this hour is now dedicated to this purpose. And in doing so, you are making a clear statement about your priorities. Every time we say, "I'll do it someday," we are making a small betrayal of our own potential, choosing the comfort of fantasy over the friction of reality. Scheduling, therefore, is the ultimate act of respect for your own goals. It is how you make them real and tangible in a world of fleeting thoughts and good intentions. It is the difference between being a spectator of your own ideas and becoming an active participant in making them happen. The battle isn't fought with massive effort, but with a pen and a planner, by making a simple appointment with yourself and keeping it.
The paradox of time. We tend to wear our busyness like a badge of honor, yet secretly wonder why all that daily chaos doesn't add up to more. The frustration comes from a fundamental error in how we perceive time. We consistently overestimate what we can achieve in a single day, while simultaneously underestimating what we can build in a year.
This misjudgment is the quiet engine behind so much of our disappointment, making us feel perpetually behind while blinding us to the real path forward. This is the paradox of time. We are, frankly, terrible judges of a single day, yet we have the potential to be incredible judges of a full year. Our misjudgment plays out in two acts. First, we cram our days with impossible, sprawling to-do lists, convinced that today will be the day we finally conquer it all. This sets us up for inevitable failure and the nagging feeling that we are never doing enough. The day ends, the list remains, and we interpret this as a personal shortcoming. Second, and more importantly, we fail to see the staggering power of a single small action performed with consistency over a long period. We dismiss the trivial effort because its daily impact is invisible. We are wired for immediate, noticeable results, and a task that takes 5 minutes doesn't register as significant. But the math doesn't lie, and it is relentlessly patient. Reading 10 pages a day feels almost pointless in the moment, but over a year, that practice adds up to over 3,650 pages, the equivalent of a dozen substantial books. Writing 300 words seems like a drop in the bucket, until a year later, you have a first draft of a novel. Saving a small amount of money each day feels insignificant until it compounds into a meaningful sum. The grand results we seek in life, mastery of a skill, deep knowledge, financial security, artistic creation, are never the product of a single manic day of productivity. They are exclusively the slow, cumulative compound interest of tiny daily investments. The manic day is a sprint. The small daily action is a marathon walk that covers vastly more distance. This paradox forces a complete recalibration of our ambition. It teaches us to practice humility for the day and ambition for the year. It asks us to dramatically lower the bar for what constitutes a successful day, not out of laziness, but out of strategic wisdom. A successful day is not one where you finish everything, but one where you simply do the one small thing that moves a long-term project forward. The focus shifts from what we can finish today to what we can continue today. This mindset liberates us from the tyranny of the overwhelming daily to-do list and redirects our energy toward systems and rhythms. It implies that the only productivity that truly matters is the kind that can be sustained. The long game is not just one game we play. For the things that matter most, it is the only game. Winning it requires ignoring the siren song of daily dramatic effort and placing your faith in the quiet, undramatic power of repetition.
The one barrier rule. We often interpret our failed attempts to change as a character flaw, a lack of willpower or discipline. But what if the problem isn't inside you, but built into the world right in front of you? The environments we inhabit are often engineered for distraction, making the wrong thing the easiest thing to do. Recognizing this shifts the blame from our morality to our methodology,
which is both liberating and challenging because it means we are responsible for redesigning our surroundings. This is the core of the one barrier rule. The easiest way to break a bad habit is to make it harder to do, and the easiest way to build a good one is to make it easier to start. We operate on a path of least resistance. Our behavior is less a product of lofty intention and more a response to the immediate friction, or lack thereof, in our environment. A habit, good or bad, is simply a behavior that has become automatic because the path to doing it is incredibly smooth. The goal, then, is to roughen the path for behaviors we want to avoid and pave a smoother one for those we want to encourage. The power of this rule is in its simplicity. It doesn't require monumental change, just a single, deliberate point of friction. Take the common goal of reducing social media use. Deleting the apps from your phone doesn't eliminate access. It just adds one simple barrier: the need to open a browser, navigate to the site, and log in. This tiny moment of friction is often enough to break the mindless, automatic muscle memory of tapping an icon. That 2-second pause forces a moment of conscious choice, creating a valuable space between impulse and action. In that space, you can ask a simple question: do I actually want to do this, or am I just bored? Most of the time, the honest answer is boredom. And in that moment of awareness, you reclaim not just that instant, but the 30 minutes or hour that would have unconsciously slipped away. The barrier didn't require willpower. It created the conditions for a conscious decision. The implications of this rule are profound. It reveals that relying on willpower is a flawed strategy. Willpower is a finite resource, like a muscle that gets tired. It's a poor design to place constant temptation in front of a limited defense. It is far more effective to be a designer of your environment than a martyr to your willpower. This isn't about being weak, it's about being smart. For a good habit, like reading more, the rule works in reverse. Placing a book on your pillow instead of on a shelf across the room removes the barrier. Leaving your running shoes by the door makes the first step easier. You are not building discipline, you are building a smarter system that makes the right action the default action. It acknowledges that we are human creatures of convenience, and instead of fighting that nature, we can work with it to build a better life, one deliberate barrier at a time.
The slot machine in your pocket. We often describe ourselves as distracted, as if focus is a personal virtue we simply lack. But this perspective misses the real story. The struggle isn't just internal. It's a carefully orchestrated external competition for your awareness. Your phone, the device you likely consider a neutral tool, is in fact a powerful psychological instrument designed to commandeer your attention. It's engineered to exploit fundamental human wiring, and understanding its design is the first step to reclaiming your time. This device operates on a principle that the gambling industry has perfected over decades: variable rewards.
A slot machine is so addictive because the payoff is unpredictable. You never know if the next lever pull will bring a win, a near miss, or nothing. This uncertainty is what fuels the constant anticipation and the compulsive behavior. Your phone is a sleek, portable version of the same machine. Every time you pull down to refresh your feed, you're pulling a lever. Every time you hear a notification ping, it's the ring of a potential jackpot. You never know if the next email will bring good news, if the next message will be from someone important, or if the next scroll will reveal a piece of information that is genuinely fascinating or useful. This unpredictability is far more compelling and hooking than a predictable, certain reward. Your brain gets caught in a loop of seeking, a cycle of anticipation that is often more rewarding than the actual outcome. Charging this device outside your bedroom overnight is not just a good habit, it is the strategic equivalent of physically leaving the casino. It removes the temptation entirely, creating a necessary boundary between you and the machine. This understanding has significant implications. It reframes the entire dynamic. You are not just battling a wandering mind, you are battling a billion-dollar industry filled with brilliant designers and psychologists whose explicit job is to optimize for your engagement. Their success metric is time spent on the device, and they have become exceptionally good at their jobs. To believe you can win this battle through willpower alone is to underestimate the opponent. The game is rigged. Therefore, the only way to win is to change the rules entirely. This means making conscious, deliberate choices that the product designers did not intend. Turning off all non-essential notifications, deleting the most addictive apps and using them only in a browser, or scheduling specific times to check email and social media. It means recognizing that every ding and buzz is not a neutral piece of information, but a deliberate lever pull designed to trigger a conditioned response. You are not weak for feeling the pull. The system was built to create that feeling. Your strength comes from recognizing the game for what it is and choosing to play a different one altogether. One where you hold the lever.
The myth of the quick check. We've all been complicit in a small daily act of self-sabotage, one that feels utterly harmless in the moment. It's the silent agreement we make with ourselves. I'll just take a quick look. This phrase is the gateway to fractured afternoons and a lingering sense of never quite finishing anything. The pain in acknowledging this isn't about admitting a weakness. It's about confronting the fact that our intuition about how focus works is fundamentally and expensively wrong. This is the myth of the quick check. It's the belief that we can dip into our email, a news feed, or a messaging app for just a few seconds and return to our original task unscathed, as if that moment of distraction is a free transaction. Neuroscience tells us this is a fantasy. The brain doesn't operate like a light switch. It operates more like a complex engine that requires time to change gears.
This process is known as context switching. Every time you shift your attention from a deep task to your inbox, you incur a cognitive cost. It takes a significant amount of mental energy to disengage from one task, load the new context of your messages and all their potential demands, and then painfully re-engage with your original work, trying to find your place and rebuild your concentration. A 30-second check is never just 30 seconds. The true cost includes the 10 or 15 minutes of lost momentum that follow, as your brain works to return to its previous state of depth. You see the minute you spent scrolling, but you are blind to the silent tax on your focus paid afterward. The solution to this lies not in trying to check things faster, but in a strategic approach called batching. This means assigning specific, non-negotiable times for these reactive activities. Instead of allowing notifications to interrupt you 60 times a day, you might schedule 3 distinct periods to process your inbox and messages. This practice contains cognitive damage. It quarantines the distracting activity into a defined block, protecting the sanctity of your focus for the rest of your workday. You are essentially paying the context switching cost only 3 times instead of 60, saving an enormous amount of mental bandwidth and time. The implication here is a recalibration of what we consider efficient. We often mistake responsiveness for productivity, but true efficiency is measured in uninterrupted depth, not in the speed of our reactions. The myth of the quick check highlights the hidden architecture of focused work. It is fragile, requires protection, and is easily demolished by what we tell ourselves are insignificant interruptions. To produce meaningful work, we must learn to distrust the urge to just check. We must become guardians of our focus, understanding that the greatest asset isn't time itself, but unbroken stretches of it. The goal is to move from a state of constant, shallow reactivity to one of intentional, deep engagement. And that begins by retiring the myth that any check is ever quick.
The creator's shift. We often end our days with a vague sense of exhaustion, feeling like we've been busy all day, yet have little to show for it. This feeling isn't an illusion. It's the direct result of how we allocated our most precious resource, our attention. Modern life is built to keep us in a state of constant consumption, scrolling, watching, reading, and listening. While these activities can be valuable, a life dominated by them is inherently passive. The shift from this passive state to an active one is simple in theory, but profoundly difficult in practice, because it requires us to stop being an audience and start being a participant. This is the creator's shift. It's the conscious move from absorbing value to creating it. The distinction isn't about the medium or the scale of the output. It's about the fundamental orientation of your energy. Consumption is characterized by input. It's watching a documentary about painting, reading articles on productivity, or listening to a podcast about entrepreneurship. Creation, on the other hand, is defined by output. It's spending 30 minutes actually painting, writing out tomorrow's plan, or drafting a proposal for a new project. The act of creation doesn't have to be artistic or grand. It is any intentional act that leaves something behind that wasn't there before. Organizing a cluttered garage is an act of creation. Preparing a meal is an act of creation. Solving a complex problem at work is an act of creation. The common thread is the movement from passivity to agency, from having your world defined for you to defining a small part of it yourself. The implications of making this shift are transformative. It begins to reorient your core identity. You start to see yourself less as a consumer of content and more as a maker of things, a solver of problems, a person who leaves a tangible mark on your environment. This shift directly counteracts the empty, drained feeling that follows a long session of passive scrolling. Consumption, by its nature, is infinite and can leave you feeling overstimulated yet underutilized. Creation, however, provides a deep sense of satisfaction and tangible progress, no matter how small the output. It's the difference between reading about a clean room and experiencing the quiet satisfaction of having cleaned one. Your time is no longer measured by what you manage to take in, but by what you manage to put out into the world. This doesn't mean consumption is bad. It means it should serve the purpose of fueling creation, not replacing it. The most fulfilling life is not one where you have consumed the most content, but one where you have created the most meaning.
The Autopilot Advantage. It's a strange paradox of modern life. We praise multitasking and celebrate busyness, yet we often end the day feeling mentally drained by a series of trivial choices rather than meaningfully challenged by important work. The culprit isn't a lack of capacity, but a misallocation of our most finite resource, conscious decision-making power. We burn through our best mental energy on mundane logistics, leaving little in the tank for the creative and complex thinking that truly moves the needle. Recognizing this is the first step toward designing a more resilient and effective mind. This is the principle behind the Autopilot Advantage. Your conscious mind, your willpower and focus are a precious and limited resource. Every single decision you make, no matter how small, from choosing an outfit to debating what to have for lunch, draws from this same reservoir. The key to preserving this energy isn't to try and become a more disciplined decision maker, it's to automate the mundane, outsourcing repetitive choices to systems and routines. This isn't about laziness, it's about strategic resource management. You are effectively installing autopilot for the small stuff, so you can manually fly the missions that actually require your full attention and skill. Automation is the practical outsourcing of decision-making. It might involve setting up automatic bill payments, scheduling recurring transfers to your savings account, or using a subscription service for household staples like detergent or coffee. The initial setup for these systems might take an hour of focused effort, but that single hour is an investment that pays dividends thousands of times over in future minutes and mental cycles you never have to spend on those tasks again. The benefit isn't just the time saved, it's the cognitive energy you preserve. You are not just saving minutes on your calendar, you are freeing up valuable RAM in your brain. Each automated task is one less item on your mental to-do list, one less source of low-level background anxiety, and one less decision to deplete your willpower before lunch. The implications of this approach are profound. It suggests that the path to a more powerful and focused mind is not through cramming more information or tasks into your day, but through the strategic removal of the trivial. It is the practice of intentionally designing a life that requires less daily decision-making. This creates a foundation of mental calm and clarity, reducing the cognitive static that so often interferes with deep work. By putting your finances, your meals, your chores, and your logistics on autopilot, you create a protected space for your best thinking. You reserve your highest quality mental energy for the work that demands nuance, creativity, and strategic insight, the very work that defines real progress. The Autopilot Advantage isn't about doing less. It's about accomplishing more of what truly matters by eliminating everything that doesn't.
The deep work sanctuary. We live in an economy that outwardly rewards busyness and immediate responsiveness. Yet the most valuable work we do is almost always the opposite. Slow, concentrated, and deeply unreactive. This creates a silent tension. We know that our most meaningful contributions require uninterrupted thought, but we feel pressured to be constantly available, treating our attention as a public resource rather than a private asset. The painful part is admitting that we've become complicit in this trade, sacrificing our potential for depth at the altar of perceived productivity. This segment focuses on the necessity of creating a deep work sanctuary. Deep work, a term popularized by author Cal Newport, describes a state of intense, focused concentration on a cognitively demanding task. It's the kind of effort required to write a complex report, develop a strategic plan, learn a new language, or code a difficult program. This state is not our default mode. It is a condition we must consciously cultivate and, more importantly, fiercely protect. The biggest threat to deep work is interruption, because entering a state of flow has a high activation energy. It can take 15 to 20 minutes of sustained effort to fully engage with a complex problem and reach a state of peak concentration. Introducing a single notification, a quick question from a colleague, or even the urge to check a headline can shatter this state, forcing your brain to disengage and costing you another 20 minutes to re-enter the zone. The cost isn't just the minute of the interruption, it's the half hour of lost momentum. The solution is to stop treating deep work as something that happens in the gaps between interruptions and start treating it as a non-negotiable appointment with your most important work. This means scheduling a 2 to 3 hour block, ideally at the start of your day when your mental energy is freshest, and designating it as your sanctuary. This isn't merely a calendar event, it is a protocol. It requires turning your phone to airplane mode, closing all irrelevant tabs and applications, and putting up a literal or virtual "Do Not Disturb" sign. You are not just scheduling a task, you are scheduling a specific and fragile condition of your own mind. You are creating a temporary fortress against the constant siege of distractions, allowing your brain to do its best work. The implications of this practice are a quiet rebellion against modern work culture. It is a declaration that your most valuable output
is not created in the fractured pieces of time between notifications, but in extended stretches of uninterrupted flow. It directly challenges the cult of instant availability, positing that true value is created in depth, not in reactivity. By institutionalizing these sanctuaries, you make a profound statement about your priorities. You believe that focused thought is your primary professional asset, and you are willing to structure your life to defend it. This isn't about working more hours, it's about ensuring that a certain portion of your hours is spent in a state of such high quality that they produce disproportionate results. The sanctuary is where you go to build something that matters.
The meeting tax. In the modern workplace, we often confuse activity with progress. The most visible symbol of this confusion is the meeting, a gathering so universally accepted that its necessity is rarely questioned, even as it systematically dismantles productivity. The difficult truth is that our collective reluctance to challenge the default meeting invitation represents one of the most significant, yet invisible, drains on organizational and individual performance. We accept this drain because it feels like collaboration, but often it's merely structured waste. This drain is best understood as the meeting tax. The cost of any meeting is far greater than the time listed on the calendar invite. The true tax is levied in 3 parts. First, there is the direct cost, the combined value of every high-salaried individual's time in that room for the duration of the meeting. Second, and more insidiously, there is the context-switching cost. A 1-hour meeting doesn't just consume 60 minutes, it fractures the focus before and after. The 15 minutes spent mentally preparing for the meeting and the 25 minutes spent afterward trying to regain a state of deep work are also part of the tax. Finally, there is the cost of delay, as the work that actually moves projects forward is put on hold for a discussion about the work. The antidote to this tax is a policy of ruthless meeting hygiene. This begins with a simple but radical question: is this meeting necessary at all? The default answer should be no. Could the objective be achieved with a concise email, a shared document, or a 5-minute async video update? If a meeting is truly justified, its legitimacy is confirmed by the existence of a clear, written agenda sent in advance. This agenda defines the purpose, the desired outcome, and the specific role of each attendee. No agenda means the meeting has no purpose, and thus should be declined or cancelled. Furthermore, every meeting must have a hard stop time and an owner responsible for keeping the discussion on track. A meeting that runs over time is a meeting that failed its objective. The implications of this approach extend beyond mere time management. It forces a cultural shift. It cultivates a deep respect for time, both your own and that of your colleagues.
It moves the organizational mindset from "let's schedule a meeting to discuss" to "what is the most efficient way to resolve this?" This shift champions written communication, which has the distinct advantage of forcing clarity of thought and creating a permanent record over meandering, forgettable conversation. By drastically reducing the meeting tax, organizations and individuals don't just free up hours in their week, they protect the uninterrupted blocks of time required for the deep, focused work that drives real innovation and progress. The goal is not to eliminate collaboration, but to ensure that when we do come together, it is for a purpose that genuinely warrants the high cost of our collective attention.
The power of batching. We often wear our ability to juggle multiple tasks as a badge of honor, believing that switching rapidly between emails, reports, and calls is a sign of peak efficiency. This belief is not just wrong, it's costing us our focus and draining our mental energy. The uncomfortable reality is that our brain functions more like a specialized workshop than a chaotic command center, and every unnecessary switch between different types of tasks comes with a hidden cognitive fee. This fee is paid in lost time, reduced quality, and mental fatigue that accumulates throughout the day. This inefficiency is addressed by a principle known as batching. The core idea is straightforward. Your brain is not designed to be a rapid switching machine. It excels when it can settle into a specific mode of thinking, whether that's deep analysis, creative brainstorming, or routine administration, and maintain that state for a sustained period. Every time you force it to change gears from writing a strategic plan to answering a handful of emails and back again, you incur a context-switching cost. This is the mental energy and time required to disengage from one task, reorient your thoughts to a new one, and then attempt to re-immerse yourself in the original work. These costs are small in the moment, but massive in their cumulative effect. Batching is the practice of grouping similar tasks to minimize these switches. Instead of scattering administrative chores like answering emails, scheduling appointments, and handling finances throughout your day, you group them into a single designated admin hour. Rather than running errands every other day, you batch them into one errand afternoon. The power of this approach is that you only pay the context-switching cost once. You mentally shift into administrative mode, and your brain, now tuned to that frequency, processes all the similar tasks efficiently. You avoid the constant, draining cycle of reconfiguring your mind's focus, which is the true source of that end-of-day exhaustion. The implications of batching extend beyond simple time management. It is a form of cognitive economizing. It forces a recognition that how you arrange your work is just as important as the work itself. This is the application of assembly line efficiency to the work of the mind. On an assembly line,
It is far more efficient to complete all the welding first, then all the painting, rather than welding, painting, and welding again on a single unit. The same logic applies to knowledge work. By batching tasks, you protect your most valuable asset, deep focus, for the work that truly requires it, while containing the more shallow, reactive work to specific, limited containers of time. This approach doesn't just make you more productive, it makes the quality of your work better and your mental energy more sustainable. It is a deliberate strategy to work in harmony with how your brain actually functions, not against it.
The 2-minute rule. We often dismiss small tasks as insignificant, deferring them to a mythical later in the belief that we are preserving our energy for more important work. What we fail to see is the hidden toll of this delay. Each of these tiny tasks, sending a quick email, putting away a clean dish, filing a document, becomes a mental open loop, a small weight on our cognitive load that collectively creates a distracting background hum of unfinished business. The painful part is realizing that the energy we think we're saving by postponing these tasks is actually being spent many times over in the mental effort of remembering, managing, and avoiding them. This is where the 2-minute rule offers a strikingly simple correction. The principle is founded on a counterintuitive insight. Procrastination for small items is rarely about laziness, but about the disproportionate overhead of task management. The rule states that if a task will take less than 2 minutes to complete, you should do it immediately. The reasoning is ruthlessly pragmatic. The act of noting the task down in a to-do app, remembering to check that list later, and then refamiliarizing yourself with the context of the task often takes far more time and mental energy than simply executing the task on the spot. You might spend 30 seconds dealing with an email now, or you could spend 10 seconds writing it down and then another 2 minutes later dealing with it, a net loss of time and focus. The rule is designed to keep your mental runway clear for takeoff. By dealing with these micro-tasks as they appear, you achieve immediate closure. This practice prevents the accumulation of dozens of tiny open loops that, like too many browser tabs left open, slowly sap your device's processing power. Your mind operates similarly. A swarm of uncompleted 2-minute tasks creates cognitive static, a low-grade anxiety that makes it harder to concentrate on the deep, important work that truly requires your focus. The 2-minute rule is essentially a habit of constant tidying applied to your workflow. It's the equivalent of washing a dish right after you use it, rather than letting it sit in the sink. The immediate effort is trivial, but the alternative leads to an overwhelming pile that demands a major effort later. The implications of this rule are about more than efficiency. They are about mental hygiene. It attacks procrastination at its root for small tasks by removing the very possibility of delay. This creates a psychological environment of completion and control, where your mind is not cluttered with the nagging sense of innumerable unfinished things. It builds momentum. as the act of completing tasks, even tiny ones, creates a positive feedback loop that can make tackling larger items feel less daunting. Ultimately, the 2-minute rule isn't just a time management trick. It is a strategy for preserving your most valuable resource, not by doing less, but by eliminating the invisible drag of deferred actions. It ensures that your mental energy is spent on moving forward, not on keeping track of what you've left behind.
The Blueprint Day. It's easy to end a busy day feeling like you were pulled in a dozen different directions, yet accomplished very little of what you originally intended. This familiar frustration usually stems from a simple but overlooked fact. A day without a plan is a vacuum, and it will inevitably be filled by the agendas and urgencies of other people. Your time becomes a public resource, and your personal priorities get treated as optional. The difficult part is accepting that this reactive state isn't bad luck. It's the default outcome of not having a design for your time. This is the purpose of the Blueprint Day. The concept reframes your calendar from a simple scheduling tool into a proactive architectural plan. Instead of being a historical record of where your time went, it becomes a deliberate blueprint for where you want it to go. This is done through the practice of time blocking, which involves assigning specific tasks to specific, finite blocks of time on your calendar. But this goes far beyond work tasks. A true blueprint includes blocks for focused work, but also for lunch, breaks, exercise, email processing, and essential buffer time to handle the unexpected. This transforms your day from a reactive game of whack-a-mole, where you respond to whatever pops up next, into an intentional design that you control. You are no longer hoping to find time for your important projects. You are formally assigning time to them, treating them with the same non-negotiable respect as a critical meeting with your most important client. The implication of this practice is a significant reduction in daily cognitive load. It eliminates the constant draining question of "what should I do next?" because your blueprint already provides the answer. This removes a tremendous amount of decision-making fatigue and the underlying anxiety that comes from facing an unstructured, open day. Your schedule becomes a clear map, reducing mental clutter and ensuring that your true priorities are not just abstract ideas, but are visibly and physically defended on your calendar. A time-blocked appointment for strategic work is much harder to violate than a vague intention to work on that project sometime today. It creates a tangible boundary that helps you and others respect your focus. The Blueprint Day isn't about creating a rigid, joyless schedule. It's about building a framework that protects your time for what matters most, ensuring that your energy is spent on execution rather than deliberation. It is the ultimate act of taking your priorities seriously by giving them a permanent, prominent place in your life.
The economy of no. We are often taught that being agreeable and available is a virtue, a key to professional success and personal relationships. But this mindset comes with a hidden, steep price, the slow, silent erosion of our time and focus. The uncomfortable reality is that every time we say yes to a request that doesn't align with our priorities, we are inadvertently saying no to our own goals, our well-being, and the work that truly matters.
We trade our finite currency of time for the fleeting approval of others, often ending up overcommitted, under-focused, and resentful. This dynamic is best understood as the economy of no. In this economy, time is your fundamental currency. Every yes you give is a spending of that currency. Therefore, every yes to a trivial meeting, a low-priority project, or a social obligation is, by definition, a no to something else, often something more important to you, like deep work, strategic thinking, or personal renewal. The word no is not a rejection of the person. It is an affirmation of your priorities. It is a complete sentence that requires no elaborate justification or excuse. Being ruthless with your no is not about being uncooperative. It is about being generous with your yes to your own goals, your own priorities, and your own peace. You must become a fierce guardian of your time, understanding that many requests are simply reflection of poor planning on someone else's part, and it is not your obligation to become their emergency solution. The implications of embracing this economy are profound. It builds a philosophy of intentional living, moving you from being a passive participant in everyone else's agenda to being the author of your own. It is the understanding that a diluted life, spread across too many minor commitments, is a life of quiet mediocrity. You cannot do exceptional work if your time and energy are fractured across dozens of inconsequential tasks. Learning to say no with clarity and respect is perhaps the most critical skill for preserving your capacity for meaningful contribution. It creates the space necessary for focus, creativity, and depth. This practice forces you to constantly clarify what is truly essential, ensuring that your limited resources are invested in activities that yield the highest return in purpose and impact. Ultimately, the economy of no is about recognizing that your attention is your most valuable asset, and that protecting it is the foundation of a life lived by design, not by default. The tomorrow bridge. There's a universal urge to end the workday by slamming the laptop shut or rushing out the door, seeking a clean break from the day's demands. This feels like a victory, an escape. But this escape comes at a cost. The difficult truth is that those final moments are not an exit. They are a critical transition. How you end your day directly shapes how the next one begins. By treating the final minutes as merely time to flee, you intentionally leave chaos for your future self to navigate, ensuring that tomorrow starts with confusion rather than clarity. This is the concept of the tomorrow bridge. The last 10 minutes of your workday are arguably the most strategic minutes you have. They represent a rare opportunity to build a bridge between your present and future self. This isn't about doing more work. It's about performing a simple closing ritual that transforms the following morning. The practice is straightforward. Spend these minutes reviewing what you accomplished, writing down the top 3 priorities for the next day, and tidying up your physical and digital workspace. This might seem insignificant, but its power lies in cognitive offloading. You are transferring the planning and decision-making for tomorrow from your valuable morning focus, when your mind is fresh and capable of deep work, onto today's already depleted mental state.
Today's tired brain can handle simple organization. Tomorrow's rested brain should be reserved for execution. The implications of this habit are profound. It systematically eliminates the anxious, scattered feeling that so often characterizes the start of a workday. Instead of opening your laptop to a cluttered desktop, unanswered emails, and the vague pressure of "what was I doing yesterday?" you are greeted by a clear, actionable plan and an organized environment. You have an immediate on-ramp to productivity. This creates an immediate sense of control and momentum, allowing you to begin on the front foot without wasting precious mental energy on figuring out what to do first. It is a powerful act of both self-care and professionalism, a small investment that pays compound interest in focus and reduced anxiety. This ritual effectively closes the psychological loop on the current day, allowing you to truly disengage and recharge without the subconscious nag of unfinished business. You are not just ending your day, you are actively designing a better tomorrow.
The do-it-now impulse. There's a moment of internal negotiation we all know too well. You think of a task you dislike, and an almost physical sense of resistance washes over you. You promise yourself you'll do it later, believing future you will be more motivated. This is one of the mind's most persuasive lies. The uncomfortable reality is that this resistance isn't a warning to avoid the task, it's a barrier that strengthens the longer you wait. The most important skill isn't avoiding this feeling, but learning to break its grip immediately. This segment deals with that primal feeling and how to short-circuit it. The do-it-now impulse is a direct counter to the procrastination loop. When the thought of an unpleasant task enters your mind, whether it's a difficult email, a household chore, or a complex work problem, a wave of avoidance hits. In that critical moment, before your brain can rationalize delay, you must intervene. The strategy is to internally command yourself to do it now, and most importantly, pair that command with an immediate physical action. Stand up from your chair. Take one step toward the computer. Open the drawer. This isn't about completing the entire task. It's solely about igniting the initial motion. Physical movement breaks the paralyzing spell of mental resistance by forcing your body to lead your mind. The hardest part of any unpleasant task is never the actual doing, it's the psychological hurdle of starting. The implications of this practice reveal a fundamental truth about motivation. Action precedes feeling, not the other way around. We believe we need to feel motivated to act, but the reverse is actually how we operate. By taking a single decisive action, you change your psychological state. You move from passive resistance to active engagement. This is a practical hack for your own neurology, leveraging the powerful connection between physical behavior and mental outlook. Each time you successfully execute this do-it-now command, you weaken the neural pathways of procrastination and strengthen those of immediate initiative. This approach transforms procrastination from a character flaw into a manageable impulse, one that can be recognized and redirected through swift, concrete action. It's a way of taking back control,
not through grand resolutions, but through the momentary courage to move before your feelings have time to talk you out of it.
The architecture of environment. We often attribute our successes and failures to internal qualities like discipline or motivation, overlooking the powerful, silent influence of our physical surroundings. This perspective is comforting because it places the locus of control within us, but it's also misleading. The uncomfortable reality is that your environment is not a neutral backdrop. It is an active participant in your behavior, constantly sending cues that shape your actions, often without your conscious awareness. To ignore this is to fight a battle with one hand tied behind your back. This concept can be thought of as the architecture of environment. The core idea is that you are not solely a product of your willpower. You are significantly shaped by your surroundings. Every object in your space and the purpose you have assigned to it whispers a command to your subconscious. Your couch whispers, "Relax." Your bed whispers, "Sleep." Your phone left on your desk whispers, "Check me." When you try to work from your bed or focus from your couch, you are engaging in a futile fight against the deeply ingrained commands of that environment. You are asking your brain to override powerful contextual signals, which depletes your willpower for the actual task at hand. The solution is not to try harder, but to design smarter. This involves intentionally designing specific zones for specific intentions. The goal is to create strong associations between a location and a single type of activity. If you have a chair that is used only for deep work, simply sitting down in it signals to your brain that it is time to focus. A bed used only for sleep and intimacy becomes a powerful trigger for drowsiness. By curating your environment with this level of specificity, you train your brain to automatically click into the desired mode when you enter that space. The context itself does the heavy lifting, making desired behaviors easier and undesired ones harder to initiate. The implications of this approach are liberating. It moves the battle from inside your head, an exhausting war of attrition against distraction and procrastination, to outside in your room, where you have concrete control. Instead of relying on a finite reservoir of mental energy to resist temptation, you strategically redesign your world to remove the temptation altogether, or to make the right action the easiest one. Willpower is like a finite battery that drains throughout the day. But environmental design is like installing a solar panel. It creates a sustainable, automatic system that works for you passively. This architectural approach acknowledges human nature rather than fighting against it, allowing you to achieve your goals not through superhuman self-control, but through the intelligent design of your immediate world.
The Perfectionism Trap. We often wear perfectionism as a badge of honor, believing it reflects our high standards and dedication to quality. This belief is dangerously misleading. The uncomfortable truth is that perfectionism is rarely about the pursuit of excellence. It is a fear-based avoidance tactic disguised as a virtue. It is the most sophisticated form of procrastination, a surefire way to ensure your work remains unseen, unused, and ultimately irrelevant. It prioritizes the illusion of flawlessness over the reality of impact. This is the perfectionism trap. At its core, perfectionism is not a desire for quality. It is a fear of judgment, criticism, or falling short of an often unrealistic ideal. It manifests as an endless cycle of polishing, tweaking, and refining long after the point of diminishing returns has been passed. A project that is 70% complete and released into the world creates infinitely more value than a project that is 100% perfect and eternally stuck on your hard drive. The former generates real feedback, fosters learning, and builds momentum. The latter creates only stasis, a silent monument to your own hesitation. Done is a state that moves the needle. Perfect is a state that paralyzes. The implications of this trap force a fundamental re-evaluation of what constitutes valuable work. It directly challenges the ego's deep-seated desire to be seen as flawless and impressive. It requires embracing the concept of good enough when the alternative is never released. This mindset champions momentum over majesty and progress over perfection. It asks a simple but profound question. Would you rather have a perfect prototype that no one has ever seen, or a flawed but functional product that real people are actually using and benefiting from? The former satisfies a fragile ego. The latter creates genuine value and provides the crucial data needed to improve. Overcoming perfectionism is not about lowering your standards. It is about raising your respect for execution, impact, and the iterative nature of all meaningful work. It is the understanding that done is the engine of progress, and that the only true failure is the failure to ship.
The sunk cost liberation. There's a quiet, persistent voice in the back of our minds that urges us to finish what we've started, no matter the cost. We push through tedious books, sit through disappointing films, and pour more energy into failing ventures because we've already invested time or resources. This instinct feels responsible, even virtuous, but it's often a trap. The difficult truth is that honoring past investments at the expense of your future is not diligence. It's a cognitive error that keeps you stuck in unproductive cycles. Letting go isn't quitting. It's making space for what truly deserves your attention. This instinct is known as the sunk cost fallacy, our tendency to continue investing in something primarily because we've already invested in it, not because it's worthwhile. The term comes from economics, where a sunk cost refers to resources that have already been spent and cannot be recovered. The time you've already dedicated to a project, book, or endeavor is gone. You can't get it back, no matter what you do. Yet emotionally, we treat that lost time as a reason to continue, as though persisting will somehow redeem it. The only rational question to ask is, if I were starting fresh today, with what I now know, would I choose this? If the answer is no, then continuing only compounds the error. You waste not only the past time, but also future time, time that could be spent on something more meaningful. This principle has profound implications for how we make decisions. It teaches the emotional intelligence required to cut losses without guilt or self-reproach. It shifts the focus from what you've already invested to what you stand to gain or lose moving forward. In doing so, it champions a forward-looking mindset. Whether it's leaving a mediocre book unfinished, sunsetting a failing project, or stepping back from an unfulfilling commitment, walking away isn't a failure. It's a liberation of future time and energy. It takes courage to admit that something isn't working, especially when you've put effort into it. But that admission is also an act of self-respect. It signals that you value your future potential more than your past investments. Applying this mindset doesn't promote impulsivity or a lack of perseverance. Rather, it encourages clarity and intentionality. It asks you to regularly evaluate your activities, not based on how much you've already given, but on how much they align with your current goals and values. This isn't about avoiding hard things. It's about avoiding the wrong hard things. It's the difference between stubbornness and discernment. In the end, the ability to walk away from sunk costs is a form of personal and professional maturity. It frees you from the weight of past decisions and empowers you to make wiser ones today. That's not quitting. That's choosing to move forward with purpose.
The law of purposeful entry. We often dismiss those small moments of confusion, walking into a room and forgetting why, or opening a browser only to stare blankly at the screen, as harmless mental glitches. But these micro moments of aimlessness are more than just minor annoyances. They are subtle leaks in our focus and productivity. The uncomfortable truth is that a significant portion of our day is lost not in obvious time wasters, but in these barely noticeable drifts into unintentionality. We move through our environments on autopilot, allowing external cues and ingrained habits to dictate our actions, and in doing so, we surrender control of our attention and our time. This is where the law of purposeful entry offers a simple yet powerful direction. The principle is this: before you enter any space, whether it's a physical room like a kitchen or office, or a digital space like an internet browser or software application, you must first state your purpose. Articulate it clearly, even if it's just a whisper to yourself. For example, I am going to the kitchen to refill my water bottle, or I am opening my email to check for a specific message from Sarah. This tiny act of intentionality serves as a cognitive anchor. It creates a moment of pause between the impulse to act and the action itself, short-circuiting the autopilot mode that leads to distraction. You are no longer wandering into a space to see what catches your attention. You are entering on a defined mission. The implications of this practice are deceptively profound. It brings a layer of mindfulness to the most mundane, repetitive actions of your day. This isn't about adding more to your to-do list. It's about changing how you approach the actions already on it. Each time you state your purpose, you are reaffirming your role as the director of your attention, not a passive passenger. This law turns you from a wanderer in your own life into a purposeful actor. It is the application of the Clarity Gambit to every single movement you make, ensuring that your actions are aligned with your intentions. The cumulative effect is a significant reduction in those small leaks of time and mental energy that leave you feeling drained and unproductive. You enter a space, accomplish your mission, and leave. There is no lingering, no drifting, no falling down rabbit holes. This creates a chain of intentional actions throughout your day, building momentum and reinforcing a sense of agency and control. It is a practical strategy for reclaiming your focus, one small, purposeful entry at a time.
The fuel of focus. It's a common struggle. You sit down to tackle an important task, armed with the best intentions and a solid plan, only to find your mind drifting, foggy, and unable to latch on to a single thought. The usual suspect is a lack of willpower or discipline, but the real culprit might be on your plate. This is an uncomfortable truth because it moves the problem from the abstract realm of motivation to the tangible reality of our daily choices. It's easier to blame a distracted mind than it is to reconsider that midday soda or pastry. Yet, understanding this connection is critical because you cannot outthink a biological system running on the wrong fuel. This brings us to the core principle of the fuel of focus. The concept is straightforward. Your brain is a physical organ, not just a metaphysical source of ideas. It operates on glucose, derived from the food you consume. The quality of that fuel determines the quality of its output. When your diet is heavy in refined sugars and processed carbohydrates, you initiate a brutal cycle of energy spikes and crashes. You consume a sugary snack and your bloodstream is suddenly flooded with glucose. This creates a short-lived surge of energy and alertness. In response, your pancreas releases insulin to manage this surge, often overcorrecting and causing your blood sugar to plummet. This crash is not a minor inconvenience. It is a physiological event that directly impairs cognitive function. It manifests as mental fatigue, irritability, difficulty concentrating, and a powerful craving for more sugar to restart the cycle. The infamous afternoon slump is frequently less about the time of day and more about the dietary choices made hours prior. Eating for stable energy, therefore, is a non-negotiable foundation for sustained focus. This means consciously prioritizing foods that provide a slow, steady release of glucose. Proteins, healthy fats, and complex carbohydrates, like those found in whole grains, vegetables, and legumes, take longer to break down. They prevent the dramatic spike and crash, offering instead a consistent stream of energy to the brain. This isn't about restrictive dieting or pursuing an idealized body image. It is a practical strategy for cognitive performance. A breakfast of eggs and avocado, for instance, will provide a much more stable mental platform for your morning than a bowl of sugary cereal or a sweetened coffee drink. The goal is to avoid the catastrophic energy drops that systematically derail productivity and clear thinking. The broader implication of this idea is that it directly connects your physical well-being to your professional and personal output. It suggests that the first step toward improving your focus might not be a new productivity app or a different time management technique, but a closer look at your grocery list. Your capacity for deep work is profoundly influenced by your metabolic health. This isn't a vague correlation, but a direct line from biochemistry to performance. Making intentional choices about fuel is a fundamental act of respect for your cognitive resources. It's about ensuring that the organ responsible for every decision, every creative thought, and every moment of concentration is operating not on chaotic bursts of empty energy, but on a steady, reliable supply of what it truly needs to excel.
The motion catalyst. Of all the things we sacrifice at the altar of productivity, the skipped lunches, the shortened sleeps, the relentless hours at the desk, the first to go is often exercise. We treat it as a luxury, a separate sphere of health that we'll attend to once the real work is done. This is a fundamental error in judgment. The difficult truth is that by sidelining movement to save time, we are actively sabotaging the very cognitive resources we're trying to harness. This segment is painful because it forces us to admit that the path to better work might not require us to sit still and grind harder, but to get up and move. This introduces the principle of the motion catalyst. The concept challenges the common view of exercise as a cost, a drain on our precious time. Instead, it positions even a small amount of physical activity as the highest yield investment you can make in the quality of your thinking and output. The reasoning is not about aesthetics or long-term health, though those are benefits, but about immediate biochemical practicality. A relatively short burst of movement, 20 minutes of a brisk walk, a quick run, or a series of bodyweight exercises triggers a cascade of positive effects in the brain. It accelerates your heart rate, pumping more oxygen and nutrients to your brain cells. It stimulates the release of brain-derived neurotrophic factor, or BDNF, a protein that acts like fertilizer for neurons, enhancing their health and facilitating the connections between them that are essential for learning and problem-solving. Simultaneously, it helps lower circulating stress hormones like cortisol, clearing out the mental static that hampers clear thought. This process means that the time spent exercising is not time away from productive work. It is in fact a prerequisite for high-quality work. The fog that accumulates after hours of static focus is literally washed away. The mental rigidity that comes from staring at a single problem is loosened, often allowing solutions to appear spontaneously. The energy boost, both mental and physical, is palpable. The clarity and renewed focus you gain will more than pay back the 20 minutes you invested, making the subsequent hours of work significantly more effective and efficient. You are not losing time, you are compounding it. The broader implication of this idea is a complete reframing of exercise's role in a productive life. It moves from being an optional hobby for the fitness enthusiast to a non-negotiable, strategic tool for anyone whose work requires a sharp, resilient, and creative mind. The motion catalyst isn't about training for a marathon. It's about using physical activity as a direct catalyst for cognitive performance. It suggests that the most effective response to an afternoon slump or a difficult creative block isn't another cup of coffee, but a walk around the block. It moves a fundamental part of the work process itself, an essential practice for maintaining the machinery of the mind. Ultimately, it argues that the body is not separate from the brain, and conditioning one is the most direct way to empower the other.
The hydrology of the mind. Of all the factors that influence how well we think, the most basic is often the most neglected. We invest in courses, apps, and complex systems to optimize our mental performance, while overlooking a fundamental element that is literally right in front of us. The uncomfortable truth is that the sharpness of our minds is inextricably linked to something as simple as a glass of water. This is a difficult notion because it's almost too simple. We assume that something so mundane couldn't possibly have such a powerful effect. Yet, the evidence is clear. The most sophisticated cognitive machinery is rendered inefficient by a lack of its most basic fuel. This brings us to the principle of the hydrology of the mind. The concept is built on a straightforward biological fact. Your brain is approximately 73% water. This isn't just a trivial statistic. It means that water is the primary medium for every single electrochemical process that allows you to think, remember, and focus. It is the environment in which neurotransmitters travel and neurons fire. When you are even mildly dehydrated, this internal environment is compromised. The system, quite literally, begins to slow down. Neural communication becomes less efficient, akin to an electrical circuit with poor conductivity. The result isn't a subtle shift. Studies consistently show that dehydration can significantly impair functions like attention, short-term memory, and cognitive flexibility. You experience this as mental fatigue, an inability to concentrate, and a general feeling of brain fog. The practical application of this principle is remarkably simple. It doesn't require a major lifestyle overhaul or any special equipment. It involves the consistent habit of drinking water throughout the day. Keeping a glass or bottle of water at your desk and taking regular sips is arguably the simplest and most effective cognitive enhancer available. It's a zero-cost intervention that maintains the optimal environment for your brain to function. This isn't about drinking massive quantities at once, but rather about consistent, moderate intake that prevents the slow creep of dehydration that often happens during a busy workday, especially if you consume diuretics like coffee or tea. The broader implication of this idea is profound. It serves as a powerful reminder that our advanced cognition, our capacity for reason and creativity, is built upon a foundation of basic biology. The mind is not a separate, ethereal entity that operates independently from the physical body. It is utterly dependent on it.
The state of the body directly dictates the capabilities of the mind. We cannot expect to operate at a high cognitive level while ignoring our physiological needs. The hydrology of the mind grounds the pursuit of productivity and mental clarity in the reality of human biology. It suggests that before searching for complex solutions to focus issues, we should first address the fundamental prerequisites: a well-hydrated brain, adequately fueled with stable energy, and oxygenated through movement. It is a call to respect the biological basis of our intelligence, starting with the most essential nutrient of all.
The caffeine cutoff. It's the afternoon slump, a nearly universal experience, and the solution seems just as universal: a fresh cup of coffee. This ritual feels like a necessary reboot, a tool to power through the rest of the day. But what if this seemingly innocent habit is the very thing undermining your energy day after day? This is a difficult idea to confront because it challenges a deeply ingrained cultural practice and asks us to question a substance many rely on. The notion that our solution is actually our problem is frustrating, yet understanding this dynamic is critical for breaking a cycle that quietly diminishes our focus and well-being. This brings us to the principle of the caffeine cutoff. The concept reframes caffeine not as simply a pick-me-up, but as a powerful psychoactive substance that must be managed with strategic precision. The key to understanding its double-edged nature lies in its half-life, the time it takes for your body to eliminate half of the ingested caffeine. For most people, this period is about 6 hours. This means if you drink a coffee containing 200 milligrams of caffeine at 3 p.m., approximately 100 milligrams is still active in your system at 9 p.m. By midnight, 50 milligrams may still be circulating. This residual caffeine is enough to act as a central nervous system stimulant at a time when your brain is desperately trying to wind down for restorative sleep. The primary issue is not just falling asleep, but the quality of the sleep you achieve. Caffeine actively interferes with your sleep architecture, particularly the deep, slow-wave sleep stages that are crucial for physical repair and memory consolidation. It also disrupts REM sleep, which is vital for cognitive function and emotional regulation. You might be unconscious for 7 or 8 hours, but the sleep is shallow and fragmented. The result is a cruel irony. The coffee you use to fuel the end of one day directly creates the fatigue you experience the next morning. This sets up a vicious cycle where you wake up tired, reach for more caffeine to compensate, and in doing so set the stage for another night of poor sleep. The afternoon coffee isn't truly fueling today's productivity. It's mortgaging tomorrow's focus at a very high interest rate. The broader implication of this principle is that it forces a shift from short-term stimulation to long-term energy management. It asks you to stop viewing caffeine as an infinite resource and to start seeing it as a loan from your future self,
alone with brutal repayment terms. Sustainable energy and consistent cognitive performance don't come from overriding fatigue with stimulants. They come from vigilantly protecting the biological process that truly restores us: high-quality sleep. Implementing a caffeine cutoff, a firm rule about no caffeine after a certain hour, often suggested to be around noon, is an investment for the following day. It is the recognition that the greatest cognitive enhancer is not found in a cup, but in the deep, uninterrupted sleep that we make possible by putting that cup down hours earlier.
The law of averages. We carry around a story about who we are. A narrative built on our intentions, our occasional bursts of effort, and our highlighted successes. This story is comforting, but it's often a fiction. The uncomfortable truth, the one that's difficult to hear, is that our actual identity and the results we live with are not defined by these isolated moments. They are forged by the countless small, repeated actions we perform on autopilot, day after day. This is confronting, because it means we must stop pointing to our intentions as proof of our character, and instead look with clear eyes at the patterns we consistently live out. The gap between who we think we are and what we actually do is where self-deception lives. This is the essence of the law of averages. The concept is a stark arithmetic of the self. It proposes that your life is not a collection of your best or worst moments, but the inevitable sum of your most frequent behaviors divided over time. A common saying suggests that you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. A more personal and actionable version of this is, you are the average of the 5 things you do most often. This is a more brutal metric because it removes the ability to blame others and places the focus squarely on your own choices. If one of your top 5 activities is scrolling through social media, then that is a core part of your identity. If another is watching television, that is who you are, regardless of what you tell yourself. Your outcomes, your health, your knowledge, your skills, your relationships are simply the physical manifestations of these repeated actions. Therefore, the only way to genuinely change your outcomes is to change your habits, not for a week, not as a temporary experiment, but permanently. Want to become a person with a deeper understanding of the world? Then consistent reading must become one of your top 5 activities, displacing something of lower value. Aspire to be a person of physical vitality? Then regular movement must become a non-negotiable part of your daily average. The law of averages is mercilessly democratic. It doesn't care what you claim to value, only what you consistently do. Your actions in the long run are your destiny. The implication of this law is both terrifying and profoundly empowering. It is terrifying because it leaves no room for excuses. There is no hiding from the arithmetic of your daily life. The results you have today are the predictable product of the actions you prioritized yesterday and the day before that. However, this is also what makes it so empowering. It means that your future is not a matter of luck or circumstance, but a matter of choice and consistency.
You have direct control of the person you are becoming by carefully curating the small actions you repeat. You are not a prisoner of your past. You are an architect of your future, building it one repeated behavior at a time. The law of averages assures us that excellence, therefore, is not a single act, but a habit. You are what you consistently do.
The desire paradox. It's a familiar feeling, the constant low-grade anxiety of having too much to do and not enough time to do it. The logical solution seems to be to find more time, to wake up earlier, to squeeze more into each hour, to somehow stretch the day. This feeling, and the solution we reach for, is so common that we rarely stop to question it. But what if this entire approach is backwards? The difficult truth is that the pursuit of more time is a trap, a race you can never win. The real problem isn't a lack of time, it's an excess of desire. This is a painful thing to consider because it forces us to confront our own ambition and acknowledge that our appetite for more might be the very source of our feeling of lack. This is the core of the desire paradox. The concept challenges the fundamental assumption that more time is the answer to feeling busy and behind. The paradox is this: if you were magically given a 25-hour day, you wouldn't find yourself with an extra hour of free time. Instead, you would inevitably fill that new hour with a new task, a new project, or a new obligation from your ever-growing list. The feeling of being time poor is not a scheduling problem. It is a symptom of being desire-rich. You have too many goals, too many interests, too many shoulds vying for your attention. Your energy and focus are scattered across a wide field of half-started projects and vague ambitions, leaving you feeling perpetually busy but never truly accomplished. The real solution, then, is not to expand your time, but to intentionally and ruthlessly curate your desires. This means moving from a mindset of accumulation to one of refinement. It requires asking not "how can I do it all?" but what is truly vital. The path to a rich and fulfilling life is to contract your ambitions, to focus on the very few things that matter most to you, and to let go of the rest. This isn't about giving up on your dreams. It's about giving them a fighting chance by clearing away the clutter of lesser pursuits. Ruthlessly pruning your projects, interests, and even your goals is how you create the space to truly excel and find depth in what remains. It is the difference between having a wide but shallow puddle of engagement and a deep well of mastery. The broader implication of this philosophy is profoundly counterintuitive. It suggests that true freedom and satisfaction are found not through expansion and limitless choice, but through deliberate limitation and focused commitment. By wanting less, you can actually have more focused attention, more significant progress, and more genuine satisfaction from your work. The desire paradox argues that a well-lived life is an edited life. It places the responsibility for your sense of abundance squarely on your ability to decide what is truly essential and to let go of the rest. In the end, it's not about managing your time, but about managing your wants. The freedom you seek comes not from doing more, but from wanting less and wanting better.
The systemization of self. We often approach self-improvement as an internal battle, a war of attrition waged against our own character flaws. We resolve to be more disciplined, to try harder, and to finally muster the willpower to become the person we want to be. And when we inevitably fail, as humans do, we interpret it as a moral failing, a lack of strength or virtue. This cycle of resolution and guilt is exhausting because it's a fight we are biologically wired to lose. Willpower is a finite resource, easily depleted by stress, fatigue, and the myriad decisions of daily life. This segment is difficult to hear because it asks us to surrender this deeply ingrained idea of self-mastery through sheer force of will. It introduces the principle of the systemization of self. The concept is a pragmatic departure from traditional self-help. It states that you cannot simply will yourself into being a different person. Instead of trying to change your internal nature, which is often stubborn and resistant, you must change your external environment. You build systems, sets of habits, routines, and external triggers that make the desired behavior the path of least resistance. This is about engineering your surroundings to automate success, making the right action the default action without requiring a daily dose of heroic willpower. The practical application is about working with your human nature, not against it. If you are chronically forgetful, the solution isn't to endlessly berate yourself to be more mindful. It's to set reliable phone reminders and use a calendar for everything. If you are always running late, the goal isn't to magically be more punctual. It's to set all your clocks and alarms 15 minutes early, effectively systemizing promptness. You are not fixing the forgetfulness or the tendency to run late. You are building an external scaffold that compensates for it. You accept these traits as part of your operating system and then design a user interface that allows you to function at your best despite them. You offload the cognitive burden from your unreliable mind onto a reliable structure. The profound implication of this approach is that it represents the ultimate form of self-acceptance and practical intelligence. It stops the futile internal war. The energy previously spent on self-criticism for failing to be better is redirected into the calm, practical engineering of solutions. You stop seeing yourself as a problem to be solved through punishment and start seeing yourself as a fascinating piece of machinery to be understood and optimized. You move from being your own harshest critic to being your own most clever engineer. This shift is liberating. It replaces guilt with agency and anxiety with clarity. It acknowledges that we are flawed, forgetful, and easily distracted creatures, and that the smartest thing we can do is to build a world that guides us gently towards our goals. The systemization of the self isn't about becoming a different person. It's about creating a better environment for the person you are already to finally succeed.
The one-touch doctrine. There is a particular kind of exhaustion that has little to do with physical labor. It's the mental fatigue that comes from a long list of nagging, unfinished tasks. These are not major projects, but the small, persistent stuff of daily life. The email that needs a reply, the form that needs signing, the bill that needs paying. We tell ourselves we'll get to them later, but they don't disappear. Instead, they accumulate, creating a silent, low-grade burden that weighs on our attention and fragments our focus. This segment is important, yet uncomfortable, because it asks us to confront our own avoidance. It suggests that the solution isn't better time management, but a fundamental shift in how we handle the smallest units of work. This is the foundation of the one-touch doctrine. The concept is a simple but powerful rule for processing the influx of small demands that enter your life. The doctrine states that whenever a task enters your sphere, be it an email in your inbox, a piece of paper on your desk, or a message on your phone, you touch it only once. In that single interaction, you must make a definitive, final decision about it. You have 4, and only 4, options. You can act on it immediately, if it will take less than a few minutes. You can delegate it to someone else. You can delete it or throw it away. Or you can file it away in a clearly designated place for future reference. The critical rule is that you never, ever just read it, acknowledge it, and then set it aside for later. The power of this method lies in what it prevents, the creation of open loops. An open loop is any task you have acknowledged but not closed. Each one represents a tiny promise you've broken to yourself, a small thread of cognitive energy that remains tied up. A dozen open loops create a distracting hum. Hundreds of them create a cacophony of background anxiety that makes deep, focused work nearly impossible. The one-touch doctrine systematically closes these loops as they appear, preventing the mental clutter from ever accumulating in the first place. It is a practice of immediate closure. The broader implication of this doctrine is that it is a form of radical decisiveness applied to the minutiae of life. It recognizes that we are often not overwhelmed by the size of our tasks, but by their sheer quantity. The psychological weight of 10 small, unfinished things is far greater than the weight of one large project we are actively working on. This practice is about preventing death by 1,000 tiny cuts. By being final and decisive with every small item, you keep your physical and digital workspaces clean. But more importantly, you keep your mind clear. The mental energy that was previously spent remembering, tracking, and worrying about all those small tasks is freed up. You are no longer a manager of a chaotic list. You become an efficient executor. The one-touch doctrine doesn't create more time, but it eliminates the invisible drains on your attention, making the time you have feel more spacious and under your control.
There's a common tendency to treat the final hours of the day as a write-off, a collapsed period of exhaustion spent numbly scrolling through a screen until consciousness finally gives way. We believe we're rewarding ourselves for a long day, but this approach comes with a hidden, compounding cost. The way you end your day doesn't just conclude the present one, it actively builds the foundation for the next. This is a difficult truth because it asks for discipline at a time when our resources are at their lowest. It suggests that the path to a better tomorrow requires more from us tonight, not less. This is the principle of the evening anchor. The concept argues that a deliberate, non-negotiable evening routine is not a luxury, but a strategic tool. It functions as an anchor, providing stability and predictability that calms the entire next day. This routine is a series of deliberate signals to your brain and body that the productive part of the day is over and that it is now time to downshift. It's a conscious transition from doing to being, from output to input. The mechanics of this are both practical and physiological. On the practical side, it involves preparing your physical environment for the morning ahead. This means taking 10 minutes to prepare your clothes, pack your lunch, and tidy your workspace. This act does something profound. It eliminates a significant number of small, draining decisions from your morning. You wake up in a world that is already set up for your success, reducing friction and preserving your finite willpower for more important tasks. On the physiological side, the most critical component is implementing a strict no screens policy for the 60 minutes before bed. The blue light emitted from phones, tablets, and laptops directly suppresses the production of melatonin, the hormone essential for sleep. By removing this artificial stimulus, you allow your brain's natural sleep-wake cycle to function properly, leading to deeper, more restorative sleep. This isn't merely about relaxation, it's about biohacking your way to higher quality rest. The broader implication of this practice is that it is one of the most effective forms of self-care, defined not as indulgence, but as foresight. It is a gift your present self gives to your future self. It trades a small amount of discipline at night, choosing a book over a browser, preparation over procrastination, for a massive payoff in calm, control, and cognitive clarity the following morning. The morning becomes a peaceful launch sequence rather than a frantic emergency. In this way, the evening anchor is the essential bookend to the first hour principle. An intentional morning is nearly impossible without an intentional evening that precedes it. Together, they form a container of calm around your sleep, protecting your rest and ensuring you begin and end each day with purpose, not by accident. The strategic outsourcing. There's a peculiar sense of pride that comes from doing everything yourself. We often wear our self-reliance as a badge of honor, believing that handling all tasks, from the mundane to the complex, is a testament to our capability and work ethic. This mindset, however, comes with a hidden cost, one that is difficult to acknowledge because it requires us to assign a concrete value to our time and then act on it. It forces us to admit that our hours are finite and that not all hours are created equal. This realization is uncomfortable because it challenges the deeply ingrained notion that spending money to save time is an indulgence rather than an intelligent choice. This is the core idea behind the strategic outsourcing. The concept is rooted in a simple but powerful economic principle. Your time has an hourly value. This isn't necessarily your literal salary, but the value you could generate or recover in an hour if you were operating at your best. Strategic outsourcing involves performing a basic calculation. If you can pay someone less than your time's value to complete a task you dislike or are inefficient at, you haven't incurred an expense. You've made a profitable investment in your own focus and freedom. For example, if your focused work time is worth an estimated $50 per hour and you hire a cleaner for $25 per hour to handle 2 hours of housekeeping, you have effectively purchased 2 hours of your time back for $50. You can then reinvest those 2 reclaimed hours into activities that align with your highest value. Completing a project that earns income, learning a skill that advances your career, or even engaging in deep rest that restores your energy and prevents burnout. The key isn't the specific dollar amount, but the principle behind it. It is not about being lazy, it is about the intentional and strategic allocation of your most valuable resource, your attention and energy, towards its most impactful use. The broader implication of this practice is that it fundamentally challenges the do-it-all-yourself mentality that so many of us default to. It encourages a shift in perspective, from seeing yourself as the sole executor of every task to viewing yourself as the CEO of your life. The CEO's primary job is not to do everything, but to allocate resources wisely, ensuring that their own energy is focused on the areas of greatest leverage and unique contribution, the things that only they can do. By systematically outsourcing lower-value tasks, you create the space to excel in your areas of highest value. This isn't just a productivity tactic, it's a philosophy of self-respect that acknowledges your time is your most precious asset, and that protecting it is the first step towards a more impactful and less overwhelmed life.
The audit of self. We all carry a story in our heads about how we spend our days. We confidently claim we work hard, that we're efficient, and that we know exactly where the time goes. This story is comforting, but it is almost certainly a fiction. The gap between our perceived use of time and its actual passage is one of the most significant barriers to making meaningful changes in our lives. This segment is difficult to hear because it forces us to confront this self-deception. It suggests that our own perception, the one thing we feel we can trust, is fundamentally unreliable when it comes to tracking our most valuable resource. Accepting this is the first uncomfortable step toward genuine self-mastery. This is the purpose of the audit of self. The concept is built on a simple, unassailable truth. You cannot manage what you do not measure. Our subjective sense of time is distorted by a cocktail of good intentions, hindsight bias, and outright guilt. We remember the hour of focused work, but conveniently forget the 20 minutes of distraction that bookended it. We believe a meeting took 30 minutes when it actually consumed an hour and 15. To break this illusion, you need data. For 1 week, you must track your time with the detached precision of an accountant. This isn't about judgment, it's about observation. The method is straightforward, but requires discipline. Use a simple notebook or a time tracking app to record your activities in 15 or 30-minute blocks. The key is brutal, non-negotiable honesty. Log everything. The work tasks, the coffee breaks, the scrolling through social media, the time spent staring out the window. Do not try to be on your best behavior. The goal is to capture reality, not an ideal. The results for nearly everyone are horrifying. This is not an exaggeration. You will see the true staggering scale of your digital distractions. You will confront the shocking amount of time lost to low-value meetings or mindless browsing. You will discover that activities you consider brief actually consume large portions of your day. This moment of horror, however, is not a cause for despair. It is the entire point. The emotional jolt of seeing the data is the catalyst that breaks the spell of complacency. It provides the undeniable objective motivation for change. It moves the conversation from vague feelings of being busy to concrete facts about where your hours are actually going. The profound implication of this audit is that it serves as the non-negotiable foundation for any real improvement. Without this data, any attempt to become more efficient or productive is just a shot in the dark. You are trying to solve a problem you haven't fully defined. The week of pain provides you with a detailed map of your life. It shows you with unflinching clarity exactly where your time is leaking. These leaks are the holes in your pocket. You can put money in, but it will always fall out. Once you can see them, you can patch them. You can make informed decisions about what to eliminate, what to delegate, and what to systemize. The audit doesn't tell you what to do, but it shows you what you are actually doing, and that is the most powerful starting point for reclaiming your days and your focus.
The singular focus. We live in a culture that rewards the appearance of busyness, often equating the frantic juggling of tasks with competence and importance. We wear our ability to multitask like a badge of honor, believing that splitting our attention is a necessary adaptation to the demands of modern life. This segment is difficult to hear because it forces us to question this deeply ingrained habit. It challenges a behavior that feels not just normal, but essential, suggesting that our greatest source of pride in our work ethic might actually be the very thing holding us back. The idea that doing less at once could lead to accomplishing more feels counterintuitive, almost like a step backward. Yet, this is where all genuine productivity begins and ends, with the raw, unvarnished nature of your attention. This brings us to the final principle, the singular focus. The concept is built on a foundation of robust cognitive science that reveals a brutal truth. Multitasking is a myth. Your brain is not wired to perform multiple conscious tasks simultaneously. Instead, What it actually does is switch rapidly between them. Each time you move from writing an email to checking a notification and back again, your brain must disengage from one cognitive rule set and load another. This switch comes with a cost, a kind of focus tax that drains your mental resources. Studies suggest this constant reorientation can consume up to 40% of your productive time. What you experience as efficient juggling is in reality a frantic and expensive form of inefficiency. The feeling of being busy is not a sign of progress. It is often the sensation of your cognitive capacity being drained by the overhead of constant switching. True power, therefore, lies in the opposite direction, in monotasking. This is the disciplined practice of choosing one single, meaningful objective and channeling your entire cognitive capacity into it until it is complete. It is about allowing your focus to flood one area, creating a deep channel of concentration rather than many shallow, muddy puddles. This means closing every irrelevant browser tab, silencing notifications, and defending your attention so that one task has your whole mind. The profound implication of this principle is that it challenges the very core of modern work culture. It suggests that the path to true accomplishment and mastery is not through breadth, touching many things lightly, but through depth, immersing yourself completely in one thing at a time. It is a call to monotasking in a multitasking world. This is the ultimate architecture of focus. It argues that being deeply, wholly present with a single problem, a single page, or a single conversation is not a luxury, but the most effective way to operate. It is how complex problems are solved, how quality work is produced, and how skills are genuinely mastered. So, tonight, as you drift towards sleep, let go of the ingrained need to do everything at once. Embrace the quiet power of one thought, one breath, one moment of stillness. And tomorrow you can choose to build your day the same way, not as a frantic race to switch between tasks, but as a series of deliberate, deep immersions into what truly matters, one thing at a time.